Hello, and welcome to another episode of New Gameplay Today, a show for cool and smart people. I'm your host, Jeff Cork, joined today by Leo Vader.
Hey, where are the cool and smart people?
Yeah, right here. And,
Especially here, me.
Oh, Joe Juba's here.
Jumping the gun on the introduction like a doofus.
Speaking of jumping guns, what are we looking at? Joe Juba.
We are playing Valkyria Chronicles 4.
All right.
Which you may have already played some of this because I think in a very smart move, they put a demo out.
Oh,
Right.
So
you, the viewer, not me, Jeff.
oh yeah, not you, Jeff.
Okay, because I didn't play this.
But you could.
Okay.
That's the whole point. But this is a skirmish battle that is not available in the demo. So this particular fight is new. Whoa, and I'm getting hit by a grenadier here. So I reviewed this game, and
Yes.
I really like the original one, and I really like this one also.
Okay. What do you like about it? See, Leo, that's how you do this.
Nailed it.
Are you taking notes, Leo? Figuring
Yeah,
this
that's
out for the
good.
future?
Furiously scribbling.
So, man, did you ever play, Jeff or Leo, Valkyria Chronicles 2
No.
on PSP?
No.
Most people didn't. Partially because it was on PSP.
Right.
Which gives it some limits in terms of what it can do for like size of the battlefield and number of units you can have on that battlefield and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So think of Valkyria Chronicles 4 as more of a extension of the first game, or extension's not the right word, but like a sequel that builds off of the first game rather than building off of the PSP games, one
Okay.
of which didn't even come here. And I think that'll give you a good idea of what to expect here.
So more expansive battles, not necessarily as compressed as the PSP ones.
Exactly. So I've kind of been going along without really explaining. So like this is a skirmish battle, so this is not part of the story. And so you see it's this big map. It's got a lot of units on it now that we can't even that are still like hidden. But and also it's like you've got 10 different infantry. I've got like a tank here. I've got a tank here. And this would, compared to like previous games, this is a drastic increase, especially in the PSP, in terms of like just the scale of the battlefield.
Okay.
Another thing I want to point out that I did that's unique to 4 is that this screen's super boring. I'm sorry about that. But so your leader units, which you can see on the badge above their portrait there, they're able now to, like, once per turn, they can bring 2 other units along with them.
Okay.
So I brought with me here a lancer and a soldier who, in terms of like movement, traditionally like can't move very far.
Oh, they kind of latch on to your...
Exactly.
Okay.
So what that prevents is a problem from previous games is that you'd end up sort of with a cluster of slow-moving units if you deployed them, because as your sort of offensive front moves forward, it's too hard for them to keep up.
Right.
This is a great way so that now suddenly it only costs the one normal movement point for my leader, and suddenly I have a lancer here who's just in like a perfect position to go to this. Oh well, okay. So
Sorry. Respectful silence.
yes. So what he's getting bombarded by is a grenadier, which is a new unit in Valkyria 4, which is basically like a long-range mortar thing. And we have a grenadier. I can show you how it works. But it's really, I think it's a great addition to the whole battlefield, because just of the way it like as you're like I just was getting hit by interception fire from this grenadier.
Okay.
So that's a pretty long way to get hit.
And what presumably looks like it's kind of through cover to some degree too. Like
Yeah. So they fire in an arc. So here, I'll use the grenadier I've got here. So if you know anything about the way these previous games have worked, and you have a sense of like the kind of range and firepower that units normally have, you can see that like being able to fire this far for a one-hit kill, it's
good.
kind of like a sniper, except you don't need direct line of sight. As long as any unit can see, your grenadier can sort of take the instruction and just blast them, which is real nice. So anyway, that's it really changes the landscape and makes it harder to do one of the things that I know a lot of people did and probably enjoyed even in previous Valkyria games, which is the sort of like one scout pump up, where you just like take a single scout unit and put a bunch of buffs on them, and then they could just sort of like run for the finish line, basically.
Right. And because you could take 2 other units with you, that kind of mitigates the need to do that in the first place.
Yeah, and I should say that strategy still in many cases will work in this game, but it's not necessarily like the big problem with the last game in that sense was that it incentivized that kind of play by giving you a heavy restriction on the number of turns that it would take for you to get like the highest rank on a mission. That basically, in order to get the highest rank, you needed to find like cheap ways around the mechanics to finish the battles fast enough. They're almost all based on just like number of turns it takes.
So it feels like you're just constantly looking for an exploit rather than thinking strategically.
Exactly. And this game, though it still has rankings and stuff when it comes for like based on turn order, it's more lenient in terms of how many turns you can take and still get an A ranking, which means that you're more free to like experiment with, fun things that are more fun and feel more strategic rather than just like, trying to find an exploit. So that's their grenadier that was hitting me with interception fire. So I just knocked him out. There we go. So, and what I'm doing here is taking this. My approach to this skirmish is a very traditional approach to a Valkyria battle.
Okay.
Right? Like this is what I need to get, this base here. So, as this whole video, I've been sort of slowly making advances here and there. In fact, I'll just let the enemy have a turn.
Yeah.
It seems like a nice thing to do.
Yeah. So we'll see how they make it happen.
Uh-oh.
Man. Okay, so
very dramatic.
Yeah. A few other things to talk about with it would be like the AI, as we maybe just saw, is not necessarily like brilliant.
Well, the AI is trying to accommodate for a grandmaster level opponent in Jojuba.
I think
So
really
what is it to do?
What part of I think the Valkyria series is really interesting in the sort of like strategy RPG landscape because unlike a lot of the more like traditional grid-based strategy games, this one's a lot more of like it feels a lot less like restrictive, or maybe that's not the right word for it either, but it's like
Movement is more fluid, at least from my experience with Valkyria Chronicles.
Right. It's like so it's not grid-based, which is one thing, but it's also not necessarily all about that sort of brutal game of positioning, right? It's not about rock, paper, scissors. You maneuver behind this guy, and then, you see your percentage to hit, and then you hit for this much damage, and because he's weak against swords, and you're because he uses spears or whatever, it's like what I like about this game, and I think what I said in my review is that it feels almost like it's a similar satisfaction to like untying a knot or something, right? That it's less about the really being like tactically challenged and surviving, and more, in my mind, it's more about finding the sort of fun ways that the different units interact and the different solutions you can find to like, okay, there's a grenadier who's, like we've seen in this map, there's a grenadier who's hitting me with interception fire. I want to get rid of them. Like, that's a priority. And once I get rid of them, then I can send in like a foot soldier, and they can start clearing a path for other scouts or engineers or something to get in there. So, boo.
Well, he'll tell his kids about that.
He won't.
Oh. His widow will get a somber letter.
So
He dodged the first one.
Another thing that I like about that makes I think Valkyria interesting in the world of like turn-based strategy is the fact that it's not just like one move per unit. It's not like, okay, well, your whole army can move and attack once. It's like for your turn you have oh, there he goes. Sorry, no kids to tell that story to. So it's like I've moved this tank several times. You can focus on just moving a few units, or you can like move many units and make an advance that way. So let's see here.
Just watch.
So
does the Grenadier have like splash damage? Can you?
Yeah. So let's see if we can. I wonder if we can get the Grenadier in here. That might be. Oh, so and then we've got potentials and stuff again, which are these sort of like. It's actually one of the things I like about those is they give the. It's an interesting way to like give. To like convey personality of the characters.
Yeah.
You know, like I've got one character here who like gets nervous when he's like gets caught in crossfire. It gets panicky.
Okay.
You know, and then like that's kind of that's a negative thing. It's not good for that to happen, but it's at the same time it like I don't know, lets you know a little bit about who that character is. So here we're gonna do that. We're gonna do that command move so you can see it as it's happening here. So let's grab Riley, who's our Grenadier,
Sure.
and our Engineer.
I'll watch your back.
So now they're just chilling out behind me here. As you want to do it, with Scouts because Scouts have the longest range.
Oh yeah.
So and this character, by the way, I should say normally Scouts are Eternal Psylord. He calls himself Odin. So he has these perks that are related to him. This like weird god complex. So what I was gonna say is that Odin like is not a story-based leader. Like Riley is like a main character in the story. This dude, he's in the tank called Hoffman's. Claude is your main character. Like those are story-based leaders, but you have one leader badge that you can assign to just like a unit that you want.
And you chose him, huh?
I chose him because he was a scout, and it's really nice to have that scout be able to do that.
Is there not a story-based scout with that?
There is. We've used her already, Minerva.
Oh, okay.
But she's not with your squad at the beginning of the game.
Okay.
She sort of joins. Oh yeah, there she is. She joins up a little later. So okay, so I can't hit these guys from where I am, but I can move a bit, and then we'll see what happens.
That's quite a weapon, the more I think about it.
Yeah. Well, and like part of what makes it so interesting, it's hard to overstate, is the way that it like, because it has interception fire, the way it can punish like an enemy advance is really really interesting. I really like it. All right, so we're gonna nail that sniper. I don't think it'll actually do splash damage there, but
You did say boom though, which was pretty.
yeah,
impressive.
that's always satisfying. But you can't. Oh, actually, and then we can show this too. We'll see if this works. Because I think this counts as an armored unit. So there are also orders, which are the things you would use to like. They're like buffs and debuffs. Right?
Okay.
So let's say that we want blast radius, blast resistance. I want to like just. Where's the one to?
Do you start off with this many, or you've earned them over the course?
Oh
of
yeah,
playing through the
this
campaign?
is a late game save.
Okay.
An end game save, I think. So. So. Those are all of the orders.
Okay.
But you normally like. I think you maybe have one when you start. You get them slowly.
Okay.
So I don't for sure know if what I just did will actually affect my damage here, but let's see. So let's try to take out that. Oh yeah, looks like it did. Good. So that anti-tank cannon would have been a pain. Oh, it still is a pain.
4.
Oh, you jerk. Okay, so I think
Nice Riley Miller special.
well, again, like we were saying, the benefits. One of the benefits here is just being able to like, take consecutive moves if we want to. So with that, actually, that anti-tank cannon might not even have attacked my infantry, so maybe that was a waste. But whatever.
It was very impressive.
Got to show you how it works.
Yeah.
So I think now we can just take maneuver up, and that's the base that we want to take.
Uh-oh.
So we'll do again. some of the damage that I would be taking more damage if not for the fact that it's a late game save, so I have like upgraded stuff.
Wow.
So with that, their base is no one's directly in the base, so I get to take it over, and that's that. So what I wanted to start doing that because that's a sort of normal way to do that mission.
Right.
But one of the things that I personally love about Valkyria, like we were talking about before, is like doing those sort of high risk, high reward strategies too. You do have the freedom to, take 2 turns instead of 1 turn to finish these and still get an A.
Right.
But I still like finding those kinds of loopholes that let you, with the right configuration of like troops and buffs and things like that, being able to, maybe win in a situation where you weren't supposed to.
All right.
So to do that, I wanted to do that mission again, but with a different approach. So what I'm doing now is just using all of the characters who have the leader badge because that gives you like an extra movement point.
My turn.
But the only ones I'm going to use are these 2. All right, so we're going to give this another shot.
All right, so this is some sneaky stuff.
Welcome to New Gameplay Today. I'm your host.
What?
Oh.
Show got better. All of a sudden. And even smarter and cooler.
Okay, so here's that Odin guy. So what I'm going to do is, because I'm going to be relying on him, this is the old-fashioned like scout boost thing. I'm going to give him a defense boost, so when the interception fire comes his way, it's not going to be so bad.
Brace for enemy attack.
I love those orders, too. It's so dramatic.
Hey, speaking of dramatic, how was the story in the campaign, Jojuba?
I like it.
Oh, okay. You hear that, Leo?
Though sometimes I think the premise of the story is interesting, and the sort of stuff that it deals with. P.S. What I'm doing now is I'm just loading my one guy into my APC here, and then I'm going to make a beeline for the base. So the story deals with some interesting themes. I think part of my problem with it is the way it's told still relies a lot on just like one portrait in one corner, one portrait in another corner, and just like dialogue.
Okay.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, I've played plenty of games that do that fine. What's weird about it here is that it happens sometimes in scenes that like, and during moments that really feel like they deserved and needed a cutscene.
Okay.
So now I'm going to unload Odin from my APC, and then he gets his movement.
Oh, okay.
So he got this far without actually like having to spend anything on him.
He's a little panicky.
Particular. Yeah.
But that's fine.
And because he's got a defense boost on him, all of those bullets he's eating aren't necessarily that bad. And this is that base that took me multiple turns to get to before. Anyway, so story-wise, I think what it boils down to for me is that like that's the one part of the game that like just feels outdated. You know, like the rest of it sort of takes inspiration from Valkyria in other ways, right?
Yeah.
But in that case, it just felt like there were parts of the story that were sort of like shorted because they weren't given like the dramatic treatment they deserved.
Yeah.
But the story itself and the characters, I think, are interesting. Some of the villains are like underdeveloped. It's not like the story isn't perfect.
Right.
In my mind, the most interesting parts narratively and like in terms of the characters are how you see them like come to life through their potentials and stuff on the battlefield, and then you can also read like bios that have some like surprisingly interesting tidbits about the characters sort of hidden in them.
And the characters like each other? I saw that when you were choosing them.
Yeah.
Likes?
So you get like so there are like certain bonuses that can trigger when characters that are friends are near each other.
Do those relationships develop over the course of the story, or do like some characters always have an affinity toward another, and that's just how it is?
It starts out with certain characters having an affinity. I don't want to dig too far into some of this stuff because it will like it would spoil it for people. But what I'd say is that once you hit a certain level with a character, it will unlock what these things here that are called squad stories. I'm not even going to go to it, but those are things that develop those relationships a little bit. So,
Okay.
like a character who may not have any friends might be part of a squad story, and once you finish that mission, that usually involves just like maybe 3 characters or so that you get to use. Once you finish it, then maybe they get a new friend that they like.
Okay.
And then maybe one of their bad potentials that like makes them panicky, maybe that turns into something that's a buff instead of a debuff or something like that.
That's really interesting.
So there is an evolution in that sense, in addition to just normal, like, you get experience for finishing battles, and they level up and get stronger that way too. So,
Excellent.
man, I mean, ultimately, if it didn't come through as I was talking about it, like this, I think a fair criticism of this game for some folks might be like, it feels a lot like Valkyria 1.
Right.
For me, like, I don't know that like, it's hard to level that as a bad thing on it when, like, I really liked Valkyria 1, and I feel like this takes that foundation, and it's not just like a tiny step forward.
Yeah.
Like the addition of things like the Grenadier, the addition of things like being able to move those units, like, even though it looks and feels familiar, the way the battles play out is actually really different and interesting for me. So I had a great time with this game.
So if you had to rate it theoretically on a scale of 1 to 10,
Oh, can we do
1 being the best, 10 being the worst, what would you give it?
I would give this game a 9 out of 10.
A 9 out of 10. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah, it's I had a great time with it. It's one of my favorites of the year so far, I think. So
All right.
Yeah.
You heard it here first. Joe does not like Red Dead Redemption 2. He likes this.
it's not out yet. That's not out yet.
Very interesting.
No.
I'm just trying to create controversy. I'm so sorry for everybody. That was very bad. That was uncool and stupid.
The headline for this new gameplay today is why Valkyria is better than Red Dead.
Yep.
Because it's out now.
That's one point in its favor.
Excellent. Well, Joe, thanks for clearing that up. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And thanks for showing off the new Valkyria Chronicles game.
Thanks for talking to me. about it.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure. Leo, I can't speak highly enough of you.
What would you have done without me on this video?
I don't even know. Pulled your weight. That's what I like to say. You do the stuff that we don't see and just take for granted.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hey, and thank you for watching, everybody. We really do appreciate it. Thanks so much, and bye-bye.